Welcome to The Compost Pile, a podcast where we break down gardening, homesteading, and more. Join your hosts, David Poole and Aaron Barnhill, as they pile up information and break it down so that you can be more successful in the garden.
Anyway, welcome back to The Compost Pile, your podcast for all things gardening. We're back here again. We're going to talk about one of the fundamentals, right, in our fundamental series. What are we talking about today, David?
Talking about just general watering practices, some things to look for, some do's and don'ts, maybe touch on a myth or so.
Okay, there's a lot.
Yeah, it's a simple concept, but very practical advice we're going to give today, making sure that you're doing some of the most important aspects of growing plants. Everything needs water.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about soil first. Obviously, if your plant doesn't have soil, it's going to die. If it doesn't have sun, it's going to die. Water's on the same level.
Yeah.
Right? It's absolutely necessity. Even things like cactuses, right? Cactuses are known for being a desert plant.
Yeah.
They don't need much water, but they definitely do need water.
You see, you've got to know what you have planted and what their water requirements are. So when you're planting out new plants, most tags will tell you, give you some general ideas of what kind of soil you need, and that might lead you to give a better understanding of how much water. But most things are going to need consistent watering.
Yeah.
So, but how consistent
and how much? Right?
Yeah, how much?
So when we first started this little fundamental series and we talked about soil, I remember we talked about clay quite a bit.
Yeah.
And that's kind of more impermeable and it holds water in. So soil and dirt and all of those things, that really plays a part too, I'm sure.
It does. Accessible water, and soil type and consistency, determines the water holding value, and that's going to also affect how much you water. So there's no magical, formula of how you're going to water.
I'm just going to start writing equations for watering.
So when we go out and we install landscapes, this is the number one question. Well, how often do I water? It's kind of a loaded question because there's so many variables, especially when we talked about climate last week and sun and all these elements and microclimates. Some things over here on the left side of the yard might need more water than those over here.
Yeah.
Just strictly based upon placement.
Yeah, I know too from my yard that areas that the sun hits and it stays out for longer will have a higher evaporation rate, right? So some things I need to water more, some things that are shaded, I don't need to water so much.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I think one of the most important aspects of watering is how often.
Yeah.
Grass is probably the easiest to throw under the bus of incorrect watering practices, but it's easy to show you what you should be doing. Like you get into the summertime, it's really, really hot, and everybody's watering their grass. They're watering it at all times of day. You drive by some people, to and from work.
Going,
and they're doing it every single day. So one of the
unless you live in San Diego, then you'll get fined.
Yeah. You have to. Plants don't need water every single day. They need infrequent watering.
Okay.
But they, at the same time, they need water, lots of it. They need deep watering.
Okay.
So those people that are out there watering every single day are probably watering shallowly and for shorter amounts of time. And so what happens is that water does not infiltrate the soil here very deeply.
Yeah.
And then so plants, they're smart enough to realize, hey, the water is in this zone of the soil.
Oh, so the roots don't even really go deep, right?
Wow. Deeper watering is going to help promote deeper root growth.
I didn't even think of that.
Deeper, healthier roots are ideally going to give you a more resilient plant, a healthier plant. So infrequent watering is always the way to go.
Yeah.
Your lawn needs 1 to 2 inches a week. Most vegetable and landscape plants are probably very, very similar. And there are things out there that do require more water, like large trees that might need, far more than that. So, but there's no magical number.
And plants will need different. They'll have different water They'll have different water requirements at different points in their life, right? So let's say I want to grow an eggplant, right? When it's doing its vegetative stage of growth, I'm sure it's not going to need as much as when it's making a giant fruit that's mostly water. right? Or
and
tomatoes. Yeah.
and two, like just the timing of that growing season. Whenever you first started out, it's smaller, it's cooler, so watering may be different. And then when it's fruiting, it's in the hotter time of year, like on an eggplant,
Yeah.
summertime, we're gonna be watering far more frequently. So you have to look at like all the factors.
Yeah.
You know, the way you water in the spring or the winter is not going to be the same that you water in the summer or early fall when it's still really,
Yeah.
really hot.
So talking about roots and water too, I didn't realize this until a couple of years ago. So not this past summer, but the summer before that, we had a pretty bad drought here.
Yeah.
Right. And one thing I realized is that plants are almost aware and alive, right? Well, of course they're alive, but they're kind of aware of their surroundings. And the main line in from the utility hookup to my house to where it goes into runs between two live oaks, like really big, like the biggest. We have the biggest live oak trees
Yeah.
on our street. And when it was really dry and we were in a drought, those roots were seeking water, and every time that water was running through there, they knew it. They burst the pipe.
Really?
So I don't know how old those pipes were. They've been there forever, never been a problem. The trees were like, dying of thirst, and they started reaching out with their roots, and really, then they burst the pipe. It costs a lot of money, but they got their water.
That's wild.
It's wild, yeah.
Plants are intelligent, so
Yeah.
and it's just like us. We're going to find water. We're going to find
Oh,
some
yeah,
way
yeah.
to survive.
I mean, it's responding to stimuli in the environment, right? It's just really basic things.
Yeah.
It's
That's
very
super cool.
interesting. Yeah, it is.
One of the things too we talked about like soil and mulch previously, and those are equally important when we're talking about deep watering
Yeah.
because they're prolonging the watering and how long that moisture stays in the soil. So everything kind of goes together,
Yeah. So when we talk about water, let's talk about some water types, right? And when we're talking about deep watering, I want you to clarify something. And I think we're probably going to get into some like old-fashioned wisdom, some like pawpaw knowledge right here. But I've always heard that if you put a little soap in your water, it will penetrate deeper. And in hearing that, which could be wrong, but I've watered my plants with like gray water from the laundry, right? Stuff like this in my raised beds where I want it to go deeper. Is that either beneficial or harmful?
So gray water usage is a common practice in permaculture, but they don't use it. Gray water doesn't go on everything. It goes
Okay.
on, I believe that they use it on non-edibles,
Yeah,
but don't hold
okay.
me to that. I'm not a permaculture expert, but there are certain uses of recycling that because it
Yeah.
does have valuable nutrients in it.
Now I'm not using like gray water from the sink,
No,
right? I'm just using it for my laundry.
for laundry, yeah,
just
yeah,
my laundry. Okay,
yeah,
cool. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
My dad told me, I was like, put a little bit of that dish soap in there. It's
yeah,
going to penetrate.
I don't know. I've never heard of that one, so
yeah.
I'm not sure. I mean, soap's got lots of surfactants, and
It's got surfactants, and it lowers the water surface tension,
yep. So
right?
especially here, I would say characteristically, most water here is probably fairly hard.
Okay. What does that mean? What is hard water?
I don't really know the definition of hard and soft water because how can water be hard?
I don't know. It's
This
weird.
is it's one of those like conversations I've had in my life with somebody like, well, how's water hard?
Because I know that I know when I'm at Lowe's and I'm going to the bathroom and I look over, I see like water softening systems
Yeah.
for people's houses. So I know it's a thing.
I think it's about like how it's maybe, especially municipal water,
Mm-hmm.
how it's probably treated. 'Cause soft water, I believe, is equally not good for plants.
Okay.
I think it's somewhere in the middle. I know hard water oftentimes has some alkalinity to it.
Okay.
So-
we're talking pH.
Yeah, so it can affect continual use of that water might
Mm-hmm.
affect the soil pH over time.
That
So if
makes
we're
sense.
not testing our pH like we talked about, we could be inadvertently affecting it and just not really realizing it, and then our
Yeah.
plants are suffering from over extended periods of time suffering from any number of potential issues.
Right. Now, in my house, my system is not very sophisticated. I just have a 100-foot hose that's hooked right up to my house, and I water everything in my yard with municipal
Yeah.
supply water. I
So,
don't
so
have
do I most of the time. Yeah.
I don't have a cistern and a rain catcher or anything like that. Is that harmful at all? Because I know that the city puts like chlorine in your water. They put a bunch of stuff in there. Is that hurting my plants at all?
It's definitely not helping them,
Okay,
because you also think
that's
about
good- that's
some
a
of
good
these things
answer,
are chlorine is for helping to kill, maybe
Yeah,
bacteria.
I mean that's why they put it in swimming pools,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
right. So you're killing organic life. So
Okay.
yes, you're putting those same chemicals into the soil. And as we talked about, how soil is so important,
Right,
and,
right, right,
and
right.
we want to encourage a microbe population in the
Mm-hmm.
soil. So yeah, I definitely think there is an effect to that.
So you're saying it could hurt the worms?
Could be.
It could. I don't want to hurt the worms.
So I mean, you can for chlorine, you can always like catch water into something and leave it out, let it sit for
Mm-hmm.
24 to 48 hours, and that chlorine will dissipate off.
It just kind of evaporates,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
and then they always tell you that for like blueberries are very prone to not liking chlorine.
Really? Oh,
Yeah,
oh.
like so they say never use municipal water for blueberries.
Yeah.
That's just something I've heard all my life.
Well, my dad doesn't have that problem. He has a lot of blueberry bushes, and he has well water, right?
Yeah.
So I guess that's why he always gets a lot of blueberries. I always get very little blueberries,
Yeah.
so maybe that's
But
why.
you see though, like whenever you water with municipal water for like long periods of time, whenever it's kind of dry, there's not a lot of rain, and then all of a sudden we get this like massive, like heavy rain,
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
within a couple days everything looks like
Yeah, it's like all greened up.
and it's greened up.
And it's like, I was watering you
it's
the whole
bigger,
time.
yeah. But rainwater naturally
Yeah.
is slightly acidic, so the
Okay.
pH is more in the realm of what most things are growing in our
Yeah.
region, and it doesn't have any contaminants in it.
I always thought it was because and like a lot of the ideas that I have, they really came from nowhere except my own brain, right? And so I always thought that rainwater had more nitrogen in it, right? Because our atmosphere is mostly nitrogen. So I was like, maybe rainwater just has what plants crave.
Yeah,
Maybe it's just got that nitrogen.
I'm pretty sure that it does.
Okay.
It does contain nitrogen, atmospheric nitrogen in it. So I feel like I studied a little bit about that a while back.
Yeah.
On another piece of content we were doing, but it's just one that I haven't done enough to ingrain in my head yet.
I'm really bad at that. I'm really bad at like just kind of logicking something out, like rain and sky nitrogen.
Yeah,
Therefore, rain must be nitrogen. So, and that's the way my brain works. And then I'll act like I know it for gospel, and I don't. But when we're talking about chlorine and stuff, and you said if you just leave it out, it'd be better, right?
Better,
because you didn't say the chlorine hurt the plants, but you said it definitely didn't help them. So would it be worth it to maybe get like, I don't know, a 55-gallon drum or something, and kind of like keep that topped up with your municipal water, and then have maybe like a pump out of it?
Yeah, you could do that. Always just like simply having. Everybody's got gutters in most all instances.
Yeah.
To expel water away. So any kind of a rain catchment system, you're going to catch an insane amount of water off a roof. You fill up a 55-gallon drum with rain. Instantly
with like 1 inch of rain, right?
Yeah, it's really, really quick depending on the square
size,
footage of the catchment of your roof. So roof catchment or harvesting rainwater is really the best way. But yes,
didn't that used to be illegal?
in some places it still is.
That always blew my mind that somebody wants to make catching water out of the sky illegal.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
There are some places that it's not
It's
allowed.
because they force you. They want you to use their product. They say
and
use our city water.
Interestingly enough, in Texas, there's a company called Richard's Rainwater.
Okay.
They're the first company to package drinking water strictly from rainwater.
That sounds like an Austin thing.
Yep, it is.
Yeah.
It
See,
is.
there you go.
It's in
Yeah,
that area.
Mhm.
So it's always I thought that was really cool. It just goes to show you how like clean rainwater is,
Right.
without having to be treated or no kind of preservatives to it.
Hey, and it's got what plants crave. It's got what they.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely say like you definitely could have a water reserve where you're putting it out there, letting it sit, and then you'll be better off long term.
So, going back to some of that pawpaw knowledge, right? Some of that old timey wisdom. I've always heard that when we're watering plants, right, that we're not supposed to water on top of the foliage. A lot of people have their wand stick, and they'll just be wandering around meandering, and what the old timey wisdom is that those beads of water that are sitting on top of those leaves act as like a magnifying glass for the sun, and you're burning your leaves. Is there any truth to that?
No. No truth to that.
Okay. Okay.
Watering or getting, watering during the day
Yeah.
and water sitting on the leaves is not going to burn the leaves.
Because I've heard that. I've heard like
It's
don't water the leaves, just water the roots. Don't water during the middle of the day. People are like, because it's gonna burn your leaves up. I'm like, I don't.
it's going to increase evaporation. You're
Right.
wasting water is really what it comes down to.
So instead of putting it on the ground, if you're putting it on the leaves,
Yeah,
that makes
so
sense.
when I imagine like watering, I think about this as the way I logically make this work for me is if I'm standing out there with my wand, I just imagine myself with a drink, in one hand, and I'm just carefree, willy nilly, watering the world. When in turn, the root zone is where the water uptake
Yeah,
comes from a
right.
plant. Um,
There's
so
there's no like transfer of water. There's no like respiration on the leaves.
No, you can not now if you put water on the leaves with like say a soluble fertilizer,
Okay. Yeah.
like our microlife here.
Hey, look at that.
Yes, like the minerals and the nutrients can be absorbed through the foliage, but the water is not going to absorb through
Okay.
there. So
That's really interesting. I never knew that. Yeah. I just kind of liked it. I thought they liked it. I'm like, I'm just cooling my plant down.
Yeah,
I'm give them a little bath.
you can affect the humidity that way
Yeah.
and so on. But really and truthfully, for when we're watering, nobody wants a high water bill, so you're wasting a ton of water.
That's true. Yeah.
So the two most important things of when you're watering the garden, or really anything for that matter, is to water in the morning time.
Okay.
Because evaporation
So when it's cool,
is going to be far less. You're going to waste less water. You're going to use less to achieve the same results.
Yeah.
So all those people that are watering the lawn in the middle of the day or in the evening time, they're doing it the wrong time of day.
I mean, except for like dead middle of August, sometimes I have to water in the morning and in the evening.
But if you're watering deeply, which a lot of people don't, they think they water enough, but they don't.
Yeah, that might be my problem.
And I've tried this, because even during the dead of summer,
Yeah.
granted, I do supply a little bit of shade to the garden to help increase the water usage, but I don't water every day on hardly any of the beds that we have.
Yeah.
So it's kind of an interesting take. And the one way I know is I'm gonna take and kind of the knuckle test, or I use my fingers and I'm gonna stick them down in the dirt as far down as I can go, and if it comes up damp and I can feel that moisture and it's kind of tacky, then there's enough moisture down there if I have an established plant
Yeah.
that they should be able to achieve getting that water.
Yeah.
Whereas like maybe if I have something that's a seedling and it's dry really up top, I might need to supplement with some water a little bit. So size of plant again does matter, but you definitely want to water again in the morning, and you want to water at the soil level. All the water uptake into a plant is happening from the soil and through
From
the
the
root
roots,
system.
right, yeah.
So we don't want to waste water because it is.
I think that's one of the things that we aim to do on the Compost Pile podcast is just waste less, right?
Yeah,
That's one of the big issues. Yeah.
Ideally, we're growing things for a very specific reason, So we want to make sure we're using all those resources properly.
Right. Yeah.
So you can get away with a lot less water and be more efficient and actually have better success by watering. And I use a wand, just because I've never set up anything different, but
You have to bend over less, right?
But you can take it to another level. You can do drip irrigation or micro irrigation, where you're putting out like maybe half a gallon per hour, and it's just dripping through emitters or tubing, and it's going directly into the soil.
Sounds like a soaker hose.
Soaker hose would come next, and so a soaker hose, because it's the whole hose emits water. You might be you're gonna have a lot less ability to control how much water you're putting out, and you're putting it out everywhere instead of like specifically near the plant. So with the drip tubing or emitters, you can put an emitter directly to in a plant and dial in how much water is needed per watering.
Yeah.
Based upon the size of the plant, its watering needs. So you can really customize your watering and make it easier. Then the soaker hose comes behind it as the next most efficient, and then overhead watering will always be trumped by all of the previous ones.
Yeah, and then you also have like kind of the conventional sprinklers too, right? That's also irrigation.
Yeah, and again, there's not necessarily anything wrong with that, but I oftentimes too, watering at the soil will help to alleviate a lot of soil-borne diseases and
Okay.
pathogens.
Yeah.
A lot of things, those things start from the soil. So you think about like if you grow cucumbers or squash and they get start getting holes in the leaves or disease. A lot of that starts from the soil splashing up onto the
Really?
leaves,
Okay.
and then moisture carries and travels it upward. So watering gently, slow, and steady, I have found
I do not
I've
do
in-
any of those
I've
things.
while most people don't, but
Yeah.
I've increased my success and my ability to stop certain issues that I used to always face from happening by just taking it a little bit slower and flooding the bed gently and making sure that
Oh.
water's getting in there deep.
I just now, for the first time, realized the soaker setting on my nozzle. I just realized what it's for, right? Because I'm a shower guy. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I put it to shower, I go, do, just like that. And I just now realized that the soaker mode on all of those, turnstile ones just goes straight down at a 90-degree angle and splashes like big globs. So it doesn't splash.
Yep, and it's a like you can do like they make bubblers that
Yeah.
can go on the end of a hose. Like if you're doing like a big tree or a something that has a very vast root system, you can do a bubbler where it's just bubbling and it's like slowly
It's like a big
seeping
spoon
in,
at the end.
and then as it seeps in and the pores of the soil fill up, it begins to kind of run off and spread. So, but you're getting that slow and steady approach to watering versus just like, oh, let me turn this on for 5 seconds, 10 seconds, and then it looks wet enough, and we
Yeah.
move on, and we realize we're not getting deep enough, and that can drastically affect how well virtually any plant does.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about some indoor plants for a minute here. Our mutual friend Zach was always a big proselytizer of watering from the bottom, right? He's a big indoor plant guy, but he criticized me a bunch of times because I would just water my plants willy nilly. He was like, you gotta let the roots soak. You gotta water from the bottom. Is there any legitimacy to that? Do you need to water them from the bottom?
I mean, watering from the bottom is a simple way. I mean, because the soil will absorb the moisture and it kind of creates a wicking effect.
Yeah.
So you can absolutely water from the bottom. You can do that on
He said that it promoted deeper roots.
Yeah,
don't
well, I
know.
mean, it's the same concept we talk about, like infrequent deep watering versus shallow watering.
Versus just the top, right?
So
yeah.
watering from the bottom does have those benefits because you are teaching yourself that deeper watering is more effective
Yeah.
versus you water on top, and especially in a container, if you don't water it enough. One of the tricks that we use at the nursery is to, we'll walk around, we can oftentimes tell by the color of a pot whether it's damp or has moisture in it. But if it looks dry, oftentimes I'll lift it up.
Yeah.
And if it's real lightweight, then I know a lot of
Oh,
the
yeah,
moisture,
then yeah.
the soil's dry. So I'll water it, and then I can. Granted, weight is not a sure solution for knowing if you watered enough, but I can tell that pot is got moisture in it. Versus if I just water it for a short amount of time and I check it, then it still might be light, and I don't have full saturation.
Yeah.
So you're watering to the point of runoff in a lot of instances, so that the water is getting deep. You're filling the pores of the soil, and it's getting farther down.
What are some of the signs that a plant will show you that it needs water? For instance, I've got some citrus at my house, and when I think they need water, their leaves kind of just curl. You know what I mean? Instead of being splayed, they do that little curl thing.
You can get curling. You can get wilting is the most common.
Okay.
Wilting is people get super scared that a plant's wilting. My peppers do it all the time in the dead of summer because it's so hot. But it's a natural defense. It's an indicator for us to say, hey, maybe we need to.
Wilting's when they start drooping and sagging, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And then you water it, you give it some supplemental water, and you come back out later on, 4 or 5 hours later, and then it looks like nothing happened.
Yeah, okay.
So I mean, those are probably the most common things you see. You see just like the leaves altering how they look, or kind of looking sad.
Yeah.
And you can give them that extra watering.
Is there signs that maybe we're watering too much?
Too much water could be nutrient deficiency, so yellowing of the leaves.
Okay. Uh-huh.
But you could also get yellowing of the leaves with overwatering because you might get root rot
Or stress.
stress. So you'll often see like nutrient deficiencies become present, and that could be an indicator. A lot of times, that's the first thing we look at is like, what are your watering practices?
Right.
How often? How long?
Because it could be too much or too little.
Yep. Are you even checking? Are you just watering because you think you need to water? So always going back, like stick your hand in the dirt, get a little dirty,
Yeah.
see if there's
yeah.
some moisture in there, and then let the soil tell you,
Yeah.
hey, I'm dry.
Because it can go the other way too. You can definitely water too much. One of the biggest differences in our area versus some other areas, and I'm thinking of peach, for instance, right? Fredericksburg is known a lot for its peaches, right? Sweet Fredericksburg peaches, but we can't really grow those here because there's way too much humidity. You know what I mean? There's too much humidity in the air. It rains too much, and all of that water promotes, fungus.
Yeah.
I think is why they don't grow here. It's a stone fruit, and I think their blossoms will just get fungus in it. And it's all of those environmental factors are huge, a huge deal. With stuff. Sometimes some things can't take as much water as we
No,
have
they
here.
definitely cannot.
Yeah.
And it's we often get enough natural water. We get so much rain here.
We
It's a
do, yeah.
crazy amount,
Yeah.
So it makes it very difficult to find that perfect medium. There is
Yeah.
never like a one size fits all watering regimen.
Yeah.
You've got to be willing to alter it. You got to be willing to check consistently so that and eventually you do learn. You kind of know, but until you start putting your hand in the dirt, like checking, for moisture, weight, and just doing some simple things,
Yeah.
it gets very difficult to know how
Yeah.
much and is enough or not enough.
You talk about wasting water. I've worked all over the place. I've worked in Bakersfield, California for a little while. Have you ever been there?
Mm-mm.
So it is like the mecca for nut trees, right?
Okay.
So you're going to Bakersfield. It's flat. It's in the San Joaquin Valley. It's a desert, and you go there and everywhere for as far as you can see is pistachio trees and almond trees. So they're growing these trees to take advantage of 364 days of sun because it never rains.
Yeah.
It's also arid and dry, so there's a higher rate of evaporation. They have to water those trees with 17 times more water than
That's
they
crazy.
would here. But they get such a higher yield from the sun. Yeah.
Makes sense,
It's-
for them, I guess. It's still crazy.
It makes me feel bad, though, when I
Yeah.
eat pistachios, which are the king of nuts. Okay, you can find me in the comments if you want, but pistachios are the king of nuts.
I don't know. I'm going to honestly say I'm not sure I've ever eaten a pistachio.
You need to rectify that. It's the king of
So-
nuts.
All
Yeah,
right.
little nut knowledge there.
Okay.
But what else should we know about watering as we're getting near the end of this?
I think we've covered most of
Yeah?
the basics, I mean, it's just really key takeaways, deep, infrequent watering,
Okay,
water at the soil level. Try back to testing your pH from time to time if you're using a lot of municipal water, making sure that that water usage is not affecting it.
Try to use rainwater.
Try to use rainwater
If
if
you
you can.
Yeah.
Because it definitely, as we've seen from our own trials and just
Yeah.
observations, it's wild the difference.
It really is, yeah. And pay attention to your plants. They'll tell you. They'll
Yeah.
let you know. They'll wilt. They'll curl. They'll do all those different things. Yeah.
That's all natural stuff. So.
All right, man. Well, thanks for teaching me a little bit more about water.
Yeah.
I hope you learned something, and we'll see you back here next time.
Yeah. See ya.